are listening to Proof of Love with Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on Proof of Love is intended as financial advice, legal advice, therapy, or really anything other than entertainment. Please take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're hearing us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on, or of any of the sponsors or affiliate products that you may hear about on the show. Now that that's squared away, let's start the show. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. This episode of Proof of Love is brought to you by Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold hedging solution for the crypto community. One of the challenges of investing in cryptocurrencies is dealing with volatility. Keeping a diversified portfolio is a key to healthier returns. I keep about 10% of my crypto assets in gold using Vaultoro. Vaultoro allows me to open a gold wallet in seconds where I can trade easily with cryptos and gold. What I like about using Vaultoro instead of Tether is that the gold in my Vaultoro wallet is insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. Visit vaultoro.gold/Tatiana today and get zero trading fees for the first 3 months. That is vault, like a gold vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro, ale! Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Proof of Love, the show where we talk about our relationship stuff and get into trouble for talking about our relationship stuff.
As we will be talking about. Tatiana, you have a very NPR vibe this morning. I really like that. It's very calming.
That's good. Sometimes I feel like I have a excitable puppy feeling, and I don't think that's always appropriate. Plus, it's 7 a.m. here in sunny California, which is where I'm broadcasting from.
Yeah, well, it's 10 a.m. here in New Hampshire, and I love recording in the morning because we're fresh and we have all of our mental space for the day. So let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about something that comes up really commonly in dating, and that's called the freak out.
Freak out.
So what's the freak out? Tell me about that.
Okay, so the reason why this came up is because last week, Stephanie and I, we tried to do an episode, and I was in the midst of the freak out. And I was just trying to keep my stuff together, and we weren't able to salvage the episode because the internet wasn't holding up that day. But later on,
I was going to say you were also in the midst of really bad internet, so that was what's really going on.
Maybe there was some sort of Mercury in retrograde, who knows. Anyway, I was having a freak out, and I was telling Stephanie about it on the show because I thought that it would be helpful for other people to share in that experience. And also, more importantly, I think it just felt like maybe it would chill me out. So we wanted to talk about that, but there was an interesting development over the weekend. And the reason, what the freak out, should we explain it, right? Before I explain the story?
Yeah, I think, how would you define the freak out?
Okay, so the freak out is something that can happen more than once, first and foremost. And basically, when you first start dating somebody and you like them, and so far they haven't done anything particularly wrong, then you get really scared, and then you're waiting for something really, really bad to come up. And your emotions may become a little bit unregulated. Like in my case, I like to attribute it to attachment theory because the anxiety felt as an anxious category person. That sort of describes how I feel, and it makes me feel better because I feel basically like a crazy person. And yeah.
So are you saying that you feel kind of worried that, oh, shit, I'm starting to like this person. What if he abandons me? Is that the fear?
I think that one may not be able to articulate that as easily. I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time reading a lot of books about this and trying to, get down to the nitty gritty. But essentially, yeah, I think that there's, if you look at attachment theory, we did an attachment theory episode early on in Proof of Love. So you can go to proofoflovecast.com and just search for attachment. But basically, attachment theory stems from being a baby and the way that you bond with your caregivers. This doesn't mean your caregivers are abusive, by the way, although they could be. This is just, maybe your mom was working too much and it's the way that the baby reacts when the mom leaves the room. So they put a bunch of babies. This is an experiment that they did. And they would take the babies out of the moms out of the room, and they had the babies wired up so they could monitor their reaction. So they were checking it visually, and then they were checking it, biologically. And when the moms came back into the room, there were 3 categories of the babies. So about 50% of the babies were considered secure, and they went to their mom. They were like, oh, this is great. She's back. Everything's cool. There wasn't some big, freak out. Then about 50% of the population tends to react in 2 other ways, which are considered bad by me. That's not a medical decision, but these are the kind of crappy categories that you can have for attachment theory, which is anxious, which is me. So if your parent would leave, then you would want to see them. You would freak out. You'd feel abandoned. You'd need to be more comforted. You need to be held closely, you'd become clingy, whatever. And then there would be the avoidant babies. And the avoidant babies would almost act as if they didn't care at all. And they would almost ignore the moms. But in reality, if you measured their biological response, their heartbeat was going crazy. They were freaking out just as much. And so the way that this manifests itself when you're older is, if you're on the anxious side, you might overthink things. You may be overly sensitive to different changes in the relationship, which can be good or bad, because sometimes you are right. Sometimes you're just way off, because you have a tendency of seeing things very negatively and thinking that person, oh, well, they can never like me. It's pretty embarrassing behavior. It's not something that societally is supported. And yeah, it basically makes you feel like a loser. But then the avoidant people are almost a little bit worse off, because even though societally they're the cool ones, right? They're exactly what they sound like. They avoid. And so they pull back. These are the classic hot and cold relationships where you can't figure out what's up with this person, because sometimes they seem like they like you and then other times they pull back. That might make them just a jerk. But anyway, so avoidance and anxious people oftentimes find each other, because the avoidance biggest fear is abandonment on some level, but they also see it as a threat to their autonomy. So they're constantly in the push and pull. And the anxious person, because they're constantly scared of the push and pull, they're almost subconsciously attracted to that. So the anxious person feeds the avoidant with their thing of a person just kind of trying to like smother them. And then the avoidant person is basically fulfilling the anxious person's fear that this person's going to abandon them by giving them uneven love. Now, that's, a lot of psychological mumbo jumbo, but that's pretty much how it breaks down. And there's some really good books. We can put some in the show notes about attachment theory if you guys are interested. The point is that both sides are freaking out. Secure people will probably be pretty normal around a new relationship, but an anxious or an avoidant person has a tendency of doing that. And we thought it would be good to talk to you guys about what that feels like and what to do if you're in the middle of that kind of a feeling, and you're not alone if you ever feel that way. And if you've never felt that way, we'll keep it to yourself, because we're sharing, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking, at least for me. So hopefully this will be helpful for people. And what do you think, Steph?
Yeah, that was a great summary. And I just want to emphasize that this is basically like, it becomes a way that your nervous system is wired. And that's based on bonding with your caregivers when you're a baby. And so you can't go back in time and change this. It's almost becoming like a pattern that's really deeply ingrained. And I think even people who have secure attachment patterns when they're babies, I think they can even freak out when they're starting a new relationship, because it is scary. And we all might have parts of us that are sort of like acting more avoidant, or more like maybe we're most of the time we're acting pretty secure, but then we have a tendency sometimes when we get pushed to become more clingy or to become more avoidant. I mean, I would definitely put myself in that category. Like, I think I sometimes act like all 3 of the attachment styles, depending on whatever else is going on for me. So this is really useful to talk about. And the point is that the way that you're forming relationships with your caregivers in the past affects you as an adult when you're starting relationships.
Yeah, I think that bringing up how it's really a survival mechanism and it's not something that you're trying to actually do. Like an avoidant person, a lot of times, I have a good friend, she's avoidant, and she wasn't even aware when that kind of thing was going on. She just knew that there was an emotional disruption. So I think it's a pretty primal thing. It's very hard to break out of it because, for example, if I'm going crazy, and I mean, I probably shouldn't refer to it that way because it sounds kind of derogatory, but it's the way that I feel. And I kind of want to convey that feeling of panic, right? because that's how you're feeling. And you're like, oh my God, I know logically what's right. I know logically that I need to regulate this, but it becomes very, very difficult to do. And something that I noticed also is that even though I have identified myself as anxious, I do absolutely have avoidant characteristics. And I think that those two are really feeding each other in terms of not just the behavior of somebody else, but just your own processes. I don't know. I took a Diane Poole Heller, I think that's the name of her, test, and they test your attachment, and then they send you a graph, and then it shows you what your attachment is. And I wasn't, 100% anxious at all times. It was broken down in little categories. And I thought that was interesting to look at the nuance of that, because at first I really squarely put myself in that one category, but I think everybody can display different categories of each subset, dependent on the relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So whether you're experiencing an anxious type of reaction in a dating situation as an adult, or you're experiencing a reaction that seems kind of avoidant, the point is, like, the underlying issue is that your nervous system is basically in fight or flight mode. Because as you said, Tatiana, when you're a baby, this is actually a matter of survival. You can't lose your parents' love, or you're going to die as a baby because you can't take care of yourself. So it literally is like training your nervous system to think that losing love could be a matter of life or death. And then we don't learn as we get older the important lesson that once we become adults, it's actually not a matter of life or death anymore, right? We're not going to die if we lose someone's love or if we lose connection with someone we care about. It might suck, it might be painful emotionally, but it's not going to kill us like it would when we were a baby. So we need to basically learn techniques to calm our nervous system down when that actually happens, like meditation and yoga and weighted blankets and hot tea and therapy and whatever else we can throw at it, right? We need to calm our nervous systems down in the moment when we're freaking out. And then over the long term, sort of teach ourselves that, hey, we're going to be okay. Even if we lose love with someone that we really like, we're going to be okay because we can actually give ourselves all the love that we need.
Yeah, I think that's a process that takes a little bit longer than you would think. And I think having compassion for yourself is very important during that time. So, don't self-talk yourself and say you're crazy. So in my case, something that I thought was interesting was, that day I was freaking out. What was that, like last Friday or something? And I managed to keep it inside. Just by talking it out with some friends. And so I did not show my crazy side to the dude, which was great. That was the plan. I succeeded. And so
wait a minute, Tatiana, I'm just going to interrupt for a second, because when you say you were freaking out, can you tell me more about that? Like, were there thoughts that were associated with it, or was it just like a physical feeling?
Oh, man, you're really putting me on the spot. I feel like there are little tiny differences in the way that things are going. First of all, when I start a relationship, I have very low expectations. I expect them to be basically terrible. So then when things are going well, I sort of get used to that. And then if there's any variance in that, then I start feeling like the person doesn't like me anymore and that something is going wrong. And especially if I had put myself out there emotionally at all, if I had done something, maybe invited them to something or basically gotten out of my comfort zone, it's like the warm feeling that you have when you like somebody that makes you want to do something sweet is almost instantly beaten down by the side that's like, that's so stupid. Oh God, this is such an embarrassing episode. So yeah, I feel like
it's really great that you're sharing this. So, like, are you saying that it's basically scary to be vulnerable, and when you like reach out to the person, you want the reassurance that they're not rejecting you and that they're
correct.
putting
Right.
like taking your hand when you reach out to them, right?
And sometimes your gesture may not even be seen as one that, like, it's not reasonable sometimes what you want. And part of what's been difficult for me is actually articulating things. Like, I think that I'm articulate, but there's actually certain things that I'm not articulate about at all. And so even knowing that I want certain things, even admitting that there is that, I don't know, adding something and then wanting it to be appreciated, everything. It's just, it takes a lot of time, I think, to be aware of what it is that's bothering you. And I just want people to not worry if they can't, I don't know, regulate themselves perfectly every time and turn themselves into, I mean, just because I know about attachment theory doesn't mean I'm perfect at attaching and disattaching and stuff. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
definitely. It is hard to regulate yourself. Like it's a very when you start a new relationship or when you're in a relationship, this is one of the most challenging things because it brings up all of the old wounds that we have around relationships. And for most of us, like the first relationship, well, for all of us actually, the first relationship we have is with our parents or our caregivers when we're a kid. And there's usually a lot of unhealed wounds around that. And those will start to come out as soon as we start a new relationship. So you're right, it is a very difficult challenge being aware of what's actually bothering you. And that's like way easier said than done, but good for you for trying, like that's what we're all doing, right? We're trying our best to be aware. And I'm curious what you said before, like it's hard for you to articulate certain things. Are you saying like it's hard for you to articulate when you feel vulnerable or when you want reassurance or?
correct. Yeah, I don't want to ask for those things. I just want them to be like lavished at my feet so I feel very comfortable. And I don't necessarily want to articulate what it is. This is not reasonable, right? You should tell people what you need in order to feel good or whatever. And
Well, there's that, but it is reasonable in a way because asking for reassurance makes you even more vulnerable after you've perhaps already been vulnerable, right? And so you want a relationship to be a give and take. You want to know that it's not one-sided, right? And so a person who's in tune with your feelings and is cares about how you feel maybe should pick up on that and just give you the reassurance without you having to ask for it, right? Because they care how you feel.
well, yes, that's true. So I want to kind of move this along in context, right? Because I want to kind of illustrate something else. So,
Yeah.
I hid my crazy. I talked it out with my friends, go on this date. Everything is awesome. It's like one of those dates that turns into a date the whole the next day. And then all of a sudden, man, I hope that this person doesn't mind that I'm sharing this story. Actually, it just occurred to me. Anyway, so, everything is cool, wonderful. Everything is cool. And then all of a sudden, they're like, I just want you to know that I don't want a relationship. And it was as if
What?
the record came to a screeching halt. I was like, wait, what? And at first I kind of, went along with it for a second. And then I said, wait a second, what the hell is going on? And then that's when I kind of said something out loud, because my initial instinct was for me to just say, oh, well, I don't care either. Like me either. Just, here for fun. And then I was like, this is horseshit. So I said, this is BS. What are you even talking about? And I didn't even freak out that hard because I had been sort of lulled into a calm. And I don't know, I just didn't freak out that bad. And so then I ended up leaving. And he was just like, yeah, well, I just want you to know I'm bad at relationships. And then on my way home, I called him and I was like, what happened? And he starts telling me, well, this is really bad in my history and that's really bad in my history. And these are my concerns. And then within about half an hour of him having a chance to sort of express his concerns, he was like, oh my God, I totally am an idiot. I'm so sorry. Like, please let me see you and yada, yada, yada. And normally I think I would probably need more reassurance, but maybe because I just had my own freak out inside and because he had sort of shared a lot of stuff and because I knew about attachment theory and how people could go bananas, it actually ended up being okay. And it brought us a lot closer and it allowed us to sort of tell each other how we felt, which didn't really have an opportunity to happen before. And it was embarrassing, I think, for both people, but because I shared some of my nerdy stories, right, that are maybe not so flattering. And I think that in the end was a good thing. So the freak out isn't really that bad necessarily. At least in our case, I think it worked out okay. And I think the reason why it worked out okay is because I took the leap and I was like, well, I don't want casual. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something real. And that required me to be bold and admit my needs. And that was scary, but it ended up working out. And I think that was really on some other level, what he needed was a reassurance that I wasn't just going to leave,
Yeah, absolutely. I really love this story because it shows that you both had some fears and anxieties about what could happen with this relationship, but you understood, you had the awareness to understand that, hey, this is because we're scared because we really like each other. So let's talk about this instead of just walking away from it, or instead of having a fight that's just, saying hurtful things and not getting anything resolved. You actually had the awareness to address the real root of the issue, which was that, hey, we really like each other. And of course we're scared because if we like each other, that means we could lose each other. And that's scary. So let's work this out so that we don't have to experience that. And I think you really turned this into gold. So high five, Tatiana.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it was really nerve wracking. And, I'm on this trip, and that's really hard because you don't want to necessarily say, well, I'm worried about what's going to happen when I'm gone for a month. You know what I'm saying? But we were actually able to talk about that too. So I thought that was pretty good. Pretty good.
Oh, so you mean, so for our audience who doesn't know, you're on a stint of travel right now. You're doing like a tour of all kinds of different conferences, and you're speaking and performing. And are you saying that you're concerned because this is like a new relationship and you started dating this person closer to where you live, but you're not going to be around for a couple weeks? And so what's going to happen there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just meet somebody and you really like them, I don't know. Well, what we did, man, I'm really oversharing today. I hope this is okay.
No, yeah, it's great. I mean,
Well,
tell me
it's
how
a
you handle
relationship
that.
show. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if I don't talk about it, how is it going to be helpful to people if they don't understand my kind of logic or whatever? But,
Yes.
one of the things that I was worried about was, all the skanky girls, right? I don't know. That's what I imagine. I just imagine like harlots, just like cooing and writhing or something. So anyway, and I think that might be a concern for him too, all the random guys that I run into on the road and stuff like that. First of all, you can never guarantee who somebody else is going to meet. But I think that's really scary. You don't want the person that you like to meet somebody else. So in our case, we decided that we're not going to date other people while we're figuring out where we're at. And that's brought my anxiety level down way big time. I mean, I feel way better now, you know? I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
really nice feeling. I think a lot of people, they like to date multiple people at the same time. And they say that that's good for anxious people because then you don't develop too much of an attachment to a single person. But it doesn't really work for how I like to date. I feel like it kind of kills the romance. You know what I mean? It just makes everybody, well, if you don't work out, I'm going to have this other person. That's not very hopeful behavior. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said was absolutely me in the past, where I was sort of like, well, I don't want to be invested in this one person too much. I want to kind of like diversify my relationship life a little bit so that if this person disappoints me or if it doesn't work out, I can always have someone else waiting in the wings that I can go to. And I don't have to actually work on the problems with the one person. And that was not serving me. I just realized recently, and I've changed things. So yeah, I mean, I think for some people that's absolutely the case where, if they have the option to date multiple people, they're not going to put as much effort and energy into watering their own grass or like maintaining the one relationship that they started out with, right? It's sort of like a quality over quantity thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's better to date singularly at one time.
Your anxiety knowing that you're both on the same page about wanting to date the other one exclusively, right? Because if you're in an exclusive arrangement with someone that you're not really sure about, or you're like, I don't know about this person, they might have some problems, that to me that could raise my anxiety level. But if you're really on the same page about like, no, we both want this, then it's a wonderful thing that makes you feel really secure.
I think that this is an exceptionally nice guy. He seems, I mean, look, he could be a psycho. I really seem to attract them. But so far, he's been super duper nice, much more so than other guys. And I think that's also brought my anxiety level down as well. You know what I mean? I don't know. I
Yeah,
like the
well,
reassurance. I
actually, what
like the consistency. If somebody's able to be consistent with me, then that brings my anxiety level big time down. And the fact that we had that conversation before we left, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand what you mean about consistency, but like, how else has he been? When you say he's been nice, what do you mean? Like considerate or attentive?
Oh man, I'm not trying to talk about this whole freaking situation. I mean,
Okay, you don't have to answer.
well, no, but now it's gonna, nobody wants to listen to somebody not answer a question. So he texts often. He's like, if he doesn't text for a while, he usually says, "Oh, sorry, I was doing this," without me having to ask. So it makes me feel like he's not doing anything sketchy. I also realize I'm not allowed to, like, he's allowed to do as many sketchy things as he wants. You know what I mean? I don't even have the right to expect him not to be doing those things, but it still makes me feel good.
Well, you do have the right to expect him not to talk to other women now because you're
now,
right?
Sure, but not before that. You know what I mean? And also, I don't want to be too demanding. I mean, I think that there's a lot of magic in a relationship that needs to develop with a little bit of air to breathe, and and I'm not looking to kind of force anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That being said, he's taken me out and he's treated me really well every time, and the conversation is really easy and going. And I don't know, he just seems trustworthy. I don't know if there's anything specific. I mean, there are things that are specific, but I don't want to go into those. I mean, it's a new thing and who knows where it's going to go, but
no, that's a good answer. He's seeming trustworthy. I mean, that's a big deal, right? Because, relationships are about building up trust, right? And how do you build trust? Well, consistent behavior over time, doing what you say you're going to do, following up, following through, and basically just having integrity. And it sounds like that's what he's doing. So great.
Yeah, so far so good. Now I feel like slightly anxious again. But yeah, so hopefully if people have been listening to this, they enjoyed the freak out episode and maybe they also have freaked out. If you guys have freaked out, you guys should send us your information, your stories. Or if you have any questions for our Q&A episodes, we've been doing some of those lately. You can send them to Tatiana@cryptomediahub.com or go to proofoflovecast.com and there's a contact form in there. So send in your stuff there. Anything else?
Yeah, no, you did it perfectly. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Share this show with your friends. Proof of Love on Fridays and the Tatiana Show on Tuesdays. Thanks. Bye. If you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Do you like cryptocurrency, politics, economics, activism, or art? Then check out The Tatiana Show, where you can learn all about it in a fun and non-intimidating way, as if you're just hanging with friends. Go to thetatianashow.com and listen now. Thank you for listening to Proof of Love. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Proof of Lovecast. More episodes can be found at proofoflovecast.com. And make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. Proof of Love has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.